All right. Welcome, everyone, to this month's episode of Select Paths Exemplify. My name is Emily Simpson, and I am the education specialist here. Today, we are so excited to be joined by Marissa Prayson and the co-founder of BridgeBright and discussing when change feels overwhelming and how to make change work for you. So we're so excited to have you, Marissa. We can't wait for you to get started. But before we do, there will be time for questions at the end. Feel free to please put them in the chat. Also, as an update of our Exemplify series, we do take a break during the December month. So stay tuned for upcoming notifications and invites. All right. Without further ado, Marissa, thank you for joining us, and we're so excited for your talk today.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Really happy to be here with you guys. It's truly a pleasure to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is how to make change work for you. I know that change can feel often overwhelming for most of us, and I've personally been through quite a bit of change, which is why I'm so passionate about this topic. To share a little bit about me, I've lived in 5 countries. I've led teams across 67 countries. I've led organizations up to 1,200 people. I've changed jobs pretty much every other year. I've moved 12 times. So change is something that's just a big part of my life. And I guess you can say I even go so far as to seek change in many ways because I really, I really feel that change brings opportunity. And that's what I hope today in this talk I'm going to help you see that when change is happening, there is a way to really make it work for you by seeing what is possible, what is positive, and how it can actually be in your best interest. So looking forward to spending the next 45 minutes to an hour with you guys. And the objectives today are really to help you gain insight into why change feels overwhelming. We're going to discuss some of the psychological, emotional, behavioral and factors that are involved in the change process and how we process change. Learning some practical strategies of how to make change work for you. I'm going to share things about, how we can shift perspective, focus on areas of control, and ultimately build resilience. And then I have a framework that I've developed that I want to share with everybody with respect to how to manage your own change situations and how you can very easily apply this framework to your own life, both, whether it be in home or work situations, but ultimately really here to help you, hopefully equip you by the end of this session in terms of how to navigate changes that come into your life. So to start us off with, the average adult, believe it or not, makes 33,000 to 35,000 total decisions in a day. That's a big deal. Everything from, the minute you get up to, that whether you're going to have breakfast or not, whether you're going to, wear something or not, whether you're going to choose that blue shirt over the black shirt, whatever it may be. We make about 35, close to 35,000 decisions in a day. And which ones do you think we embrace the fastest? Which are the ones that we actually enjoy? Well, clearly it's the ones we make ourselves. You like stopping to get that cup of coffee. You're on your way to work. You stop at the Tim Hortons. You go through the drive-through, and there's that big smile on her face. It's because it's a decision that you've made. And why is this the case? Well, because decisions that we make are the ones that give us that feeling of control. Think about it. When you've got that, you've got the remote at home, you're deciding what show's being watched, how loud it is. You can even decide to pause it if you need to step out to go get some popcorn, whatever the case may be. When you're in control, it's that much more predictable. You're reducing the level of uncertainty. And that's what makes it feel so much better and not overwhelming in that case. What about when decisions are imposed on us? So for example, if you think of a day at work, you've come in, you've got your to-do list, you've got the things that you've planned to do today, and your manager approaches you and says, no, 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 I need you to prioritize this today. How does that feel? Typically not great because it's not a decision that you've made. Somebody's now imposed something on you. And one that I think we can all relate to is what happens when we go to the doctor's office. And, usually the doctor says to us, no matter how good your health looks, it's like, keep doing what you're doing, but you need to eat healthier and exercise more. This is the advice that the doctor gives us. But the reality is, most of us will leave that doctor's office. And maybe, if we're really good, we're going to do it for a few days. But most of us will leave with maybe best intentions, but actually not do anything different. Why is it so hard for us to do what the doctor says? Well, it's because whether it's a subtle shift or a significant transformation, a new decision is a step towards change. And change is difficult. It's a very emotional journey that we all go through. And this is a change curve, the Kubler-Ross change curve. And what this is a curve and like steps that you will go through in a change journey, no matter how short and simple the change is or how complex it might be. So for example, let me take you through something as simple as you've arrived at the office, you want that cup of coffee that you normally get, and there's a specific flavor that you like that's always there. You get to the coffee station and you realize that coffee flavor isn't there today. The first emotion is denial. It's like, no, it's got to be here. Anger. Why didn't the person who was responsible for ordering the flavors of coffee make sure that this flavor was here? Then it's bargaining, looking through the cupboards. No, the coffee just, it must be here. And then it hits you. No, it's not here. It just isn't. You're going to have to live with it. And you go through acceptance. And then you realize, well, I really wanted a hot beverage. I would have preferred my preferred flavor, but I'm going to be okay with this hot beverage. So you ultimately find meaning and you come out of it. In this particular instance, this change journey that we've just gone through is very, very brief. It takes literally a minute or two when you've gone through it, but you go through all of those steps. The same thing happens if it's a much bigger event. So for example, maybe you're living in an apartment and your landlord says to you, you know what? I've decided to sell this place, so you're going to have to move out. That's a much more complex, difficult journey, but you're going to go through the same steps. And it's going to take a much longer, of course, period of time to do that. But none of these steps get missed. And I think that that's really the point that I'm trying to make. And it's important to know that because we're going to spend a lot of time talking about how you get yourself out of the curve, which is getting to acceptance and getting to meaning, because that's when change does start to work for you. And so why does change feel so overwhelming? Well, it's a lot of it has to do with that aspect of control that we talked about, the fear of the unknown, that uncertainty, the feeling of loss. When we go through a change and when somebody imposes, especially change on us, we feel that what are we losing in this? So if we go through the coffee, back to the coffee example, oh, I really wanted that flavor of coffee. I've lost that. Or, your landlord says you've got to move out. You're thinking about all the things that you're losing, like all the things that you've established in your home that is no longer going to be your home now. Automatically, our brain goes to loss and feelings of loss. The other thing that happens is things like disruption of habits. This is really important because we get into ultimately our comfort zone in life. And even if you think about a work situation, we go through a situation where we get to know our jobs, we get to know it really well, it becomes easy. When it becomes easy, our brain doesn't have to do a whole lot of work to get that job done anymore. And that is just a nice sensation. It's a comfort zone. As soon as change comes in and somebody says you're going to do something else, well, that's when you start to feel like, oh no, it starts to feel overwhelming because your brain is also going to need to do a lot more work in terms of now understanding the new situation, doing the new job, or making the change, whatever it is. So all these times when we're taken out of our comfort zone is when it really starts to feel overwhelming. And we feel that anticipatory anxiety, the expectation gaps, that uncertainty of what's going to happen, all of these things really play into it. So, when do we actually embrace change? We only start to embrace change when we feel that there's a gain in what we're doing, when there's a positive aspect to it, as I discussed earlier, that meaning, the gain, the positivity. Only at that point will we start to embrace change. So let me actually give you an example of this. When I had a dream my whole life to have an international career. And it was something that I spoke to my husband about from day one of our marriage. This dream of, having an international journey and an adventure and going on this, what I thought was just a fabulous way to live our lives. And he knew we were going to do this. But and he always said to me, I'm very supportive. I really want to do this with you. And the day finally came when this was going to be possible. I was working for a company that was had international offices, but had their headquarters in Canada in Montreal. And we were living in Toronto at the time, in the Toronto area. And we needed to move to Montreal as a first step to me embarking on this international career. And when I told my husband, well, you know what, it's happened. I'm getting this promotion. We're moving to Montreal. His first, and I'll take us back to this change curve. His first was, no, you're got to be kidding. Like denial set in, first of all. He was like, I know we've been talking about this, but really, like it's actually happening. And then anger set in with him, which is really, oh my gosh, like you want me to leave my family, you want me to leave my job, you want me to leave all my friends and everything that's familiar to me in order to pursue this. And then he kind of went into bargaining, which was like, well, you know what? Who knows if this is going to work out? Why don't you go by yourself to Montreal and I'll stay here? I mean, we don't want to sell the house and do all of this. What if it doesn't work out? Like, you better just go on your own. And so I tell him, no, like this isn't what I imagined. Like, I really want us to do this together. I want us to be a family. I want us to be all in on this. That's really the way. This is, really the best chances of success if we do this together. And as you can imagine, this was a long change curve, so over quite a few weeks, a period of time. And he really like basically went into depression of realizing this is a reality now. This is a big decision and this is going to be a big change in his life. And then he approaches me one day and he says, you know what? Fine. I'm ready to take this on. I'm ready to go on this adventure with you, but under one condition. And I'm thinking, okay, what is he going to say? And he says, I want a motorcycle. I'm getting a motorcycle. And so as you can imagine, I'm like, okay, fair. This is a fair ask. He needs to get something out of this. But as you can see, until he found acceptance and ultimately meaning, that gain that he could get out of this, he really wasn't ready to embrace the change. And once he did, then things really started to change in terms of us moving forward and really embracing what was about to happen. So how can we do this? How can we actually look at things in a way that helps us navigate changes? Well, the first step is reframing the situation. If we think about the example I shared with you with my husband, he needed to reframe that situation. He needed to think about, okay, what is it that I can get out of this deal that is going to work for me? And when he shifted perspective, when he switched seats and looked at the situation from a different perspective, that's when things started to open up for him in terms of his mind and willingness to embrace the change, but also in terms of our ability as a couple to navigate the situation together. So what I'd like to share with you now is a framework on how you can make change work for you. And the framework is something that I developed after all of my years and all of the changes that I shared with you earlier in terms of things that I've done, places that I've been, experiences that I've had. This particular framework has really helped me navigate those changes with a lot of confidence, reducing anxiety, and just really feeling much more empowered and in control of what was happening. And the framework is called PI. Includes perspective, influence, and enthusiasm. So let me walk you through how it works. So, perspective, first of all, is reframing how we see the change. So, if we can adopt a growth mindset, for example, to do things differently, learn something new from this experience, shifting the narrative in our minds to really see this in a different way. Let's say an opportunity, identifying that this is an actual opportunity, even though it might seem very, very difficult. um, the second one is influence. How do we shape the outcomes by leveraging our control? Because in a change situation, especially when something's been imposed on us, we can't control everything, but usually we can control something. And even in my most difficult change situation, even if it was that little string of control that I could keep, that's what kept me going, even in the most difficult ones. So it might be the ability to communicate with somebody, or reaching out to your network, or taking the initiative to take and keep those areas that are within your control. So these are the aspects that'll really help in terms of the third part, which is enthusiasm. And that this is all about cultivating a positive attitude and building the resilience, modeling positivity, building a resilience to sustain enthusiasm. The more positive and the more you focus on what you're going to gain in that change, the more resilient you will be to navigate the change that is actually taking place. So, as I said, perspective, influence, enthusiasm is what the framework outlines. Now, to really bring this to light, I want to share a personal example that hopefully will resonate with some of you. For me, and the example that I want to use is when when my boss I had a boss that I had worked with for 3 years. And this manager was really fantastic. And as you can imagine, after 3 years, we got really close. We got to know each other really well. It was just easy to work with him. I had lots of autonomy. I was very much empowered to do the things that I wanted to do. And when he announced that he was leaving and somebody new was coming in, that was very difficult. It always is. Getting a new manager is really tough because it brings in all those emotions we talked about. It's uncertainty. You don't know, is that person going to like you? Are you going to be successful working for them? Are you going to get fired just because they don't like working with you? All of these things will start coming into our mind. And in that case, I was in the same boat. I was getting a new manager and I didn't know what that was going to look like. So once I could set aside, the perspective of, okay, this is going to be horrible, and actually look at this differently and say, well, how can I look at this differently? Well, one in this particular case was he was coming from a finance background. And I knew that, I thought, oh, wait a minute, he's going to bring in skills and knowledge that my previous manager didn't have. I'm actually going to be able to learn a lot from this person. The other thing was he has a vast network that was different from my previous manager. So I thought, okay, he's going to be able to introduce me to people and maybe help me navigate my career forward in a way that my previous boss couldn't. Expose me to new opportunities, give me, an opportunity to meet new people. And all of these things made me see the situation a little bit differently when I could just sort of shift my perspective and say, okay, how could this potentially work for me and in my favor? Then I thought about, well, what do I have control over? I can't control, I've got a new manager coming in that's outside of my control. But what is in my control is how I show up. One is, okay, I can take this, as be open to it. I can think about, well, and what did come to mind was I was the one who actually had all the experience. He was coming into a new role, and I could really be his right hand in all of these changes because I had lots of the knowledge of the organization. I had a lot of information. I could help him in terms of how he navigates the change. I could become a real ally for him. And was an area of opportunity then for me to build a trusting relationship with him so that we could work hopefully well together in the future. And then finally, enthusiasm. As I started to get more positive thoughts about how this could be good and how it could even help me in my career in the future. Then I started to really think about that, the small, like the wins that I have, and I could really think about, okay, this is something that could actually be positive. And the best part of really gaining that enthusiasm and finding that meaning is that you start to then put your energy there. And that's the key thing, because if you can imagine when you're in a situation where you're just constantly pushing back, pushing back, pushing back against a change, all your energy is going towards pushing back, as opposed to how can I make it work for me? And the more I thought about it, the more ideas that I came up with in terms of how this can work for me, which ultimately helped me build that resilience. So when things didn't go as I thought, maybe in all the cases, and there were many, of course, with a new person coming in, I had a lot more resilience that had been built up because I could see the more positive things in a bigger picture than focusing strictly on the negative aspects of the change that was happening. So I hope that example helped you a little bit. We're going to actually go through a couple of practical examples that I hope will also. I wanted to share some tips and exercises that I think could be helpful for you as you navigate change, either today or in the future. So let's start with one, and we're going to go through these a little bit quickly because I know you're going to have access to this recording afterwards, so you'll be able to review them again and practice them, of course, and I hope you will. But the first one is really a visualization exercise. And it's imagining that positive outcome. Because as I said, the more you generate enthusiasm for the change and really find that meaning for yourself, you can reduce a lot of anxiety about what's to happen in terms of the change itself. So in this example, choose a current challenge where you are struggling with change. It could be anything at home. It could be something, like I said, in your personal life or in your work life. And then close your eyes and imagine the best possible outcome of the change, visualizing yourself successfully adapting and thriving. So you're out there, you're in the future, and things are looking really, really good. Think about what are 3 actions that you can take now to make that outcome a reality. So, what are those things that are within your control in this particular case that can make that outcome a reality? So that's one exercise. I know we don't have time now to go for you guys to actually go through it, but I'm hoping that that's something, an exercise that you will use in the future next time you're confronted with a change, is really thinking about that positive outcome. The second exercise and practical tip that I wanted to share with you is how to actually integrate and make pie work for you. So it's the aspect of perspective, influence, and enthusiasm. How do we integrate those into a real live example? Because what we're looking at is how we, I want you to do here is take a blank sheet of paper and divide it in 3 columns, labeling each one. One is perspective, which is really going to look at how you reframe your perspective about the challenge that you're facing. The second one is influence, and you're going to look at identifying areas of control where you can exert that influence. And then finally, enthusiasm. How can you build the enthusiasm and ultimately resilience to stay motivated? So let's go through an example of what this would look like. Perspective. And the example that I thought I would use here, and I think all of us can relate to, is a manager asking you to take on increased responsibility. You've got your job, you've got your role, they approach you and they say, you know what? I'd really like you to take on this added responsibility. Your first reaction might be, breath in, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. Or he's asking me to do something that I've never done before. Well, in that situation, again, we want to look at how do we shift perspective? How can we see this differently? Reality is you may not have the skills to do what you've just been asked to do by your manager, but maybe this is an opportunity to develop new skills. That could be another perspective in terms of how you look at it. The second one is I don't have these skills. How am I going to learn them? Well, who could you learn them from? What's within your control? Maybe you've got, a network of people who you can tap into who have done this job. Maybe the person who previously did the job can actually help you. Maybe you can approach the manager to get some training. All of this is looking for those elements where you can actually influence the outcome and ultimately take control of your own destiny in this particular case. And finally, enthusiasm. How do you really build that positive mindset of trying to see where you can gain something from the change that is happening? And one way to do it is, for example, journaling. For some people, this works really well for listing 3 small wins each day, or 3 things that you're grateful for in terms of, how do you build that habit of focusing on the positive? These are all things that will help you navigate this change with much more confidence, with much more resilience, and help you through some of those difficult situations. And if you start by just thinking of one, even that's okay. The point is to start shifting your mindset to thinking, how can I make this a positive change for me? And what can I leverage in order to do that? So I do hope that through these exercises, I've been able to share with you how Pi can really change things, how you do have much more control in the situation than maybe you originally thought you did. Because when you can take perspective, influence, and enthusiasm and apply it to that change situation, you can make change work for you. So I hope this was helpful. It was really a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think topics such as this is so important, even so like in the last couple of years, but in moving forward and all the opportunity that's to come. I do want to start with a question myself.
Okay,
I really
great.
love the methods and the techniques. Do you have any books or podcasts, or is there any leaders that you really like to listen to and follow that have the same mindset as you?
Well, I mean, a favorite of mine is Mel Robbins, who often talks about the change journey. And she's a coach. I'm a coach, so I think maybe that's why we link. But that's a podcast that I highly recommend. She touches on a lot of different topics and does also talk about this fact of, we're all going through reinvention, really. Like whether we're in a situation of being stuck or we're feeling undecided about something. But it's all in how we navigate this change and see the future in a more positive way that allows us to take that first step towards a positive change. So I'd highly recommend Mel Robbins. Lots of other books. I mean, coaches that I do a lot of reading, and I wish I had a list right in front of me right now, Emily. But it's something that we can follow up with afterwards too. Marshall Goldsmith is another one that comes to mind. He talks a lot about what got you here isn't what's going to get you there, for example. So I hope those are helpful. Adam Grant, Brene Brown, lots of good ones.
I know it's always those questions that put people on the spot a little bit, but yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be great to.
Oh, sorry, we lost you. We lost you, Emily. Oh, there you are.
Sorry,
You're back.
I was on mute.
That's okay.
Accidentally hit the space. I said I'm sure it's hard sometimes to be put on the spot with those lists, but for anyone who is looking for questions or for follow-up, Marissa's information will be forwarded with a copy of the recording and resources afterwards as well. So we want to thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and that was an amazing seminar. And thank you again.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.